Is there a game this week that jumps out at you that people are going to look back on and say, boy, we were wrong?
Well, I think the world wants to look at this New England-Baltimore game and New England getting 7 points at home. I, their defense is not playing bad. But what I'm questioning with New England is do they actually want to win? Are they smart enough to lose at this point? So I think that might be a game where everybody kind of looks at it and says, "What's going on?" I won't touch the Sunday, but the one really that jumps off the page at me is the Saints getting 10 points. I think that the Saints are getting those kind of points because of the performance that they're coming off of. But I think that what they just did to Tampa, I think, is a byproduct of two things. It's weird things happen on Sunday Night Football. Majority of the time, the dog either wins outright or covers. But they figured out how to beat this team. They've blown them out twice this year. So I 10 points in a game like this, and a coach that knows how to beat you. Let's talk about last year, what happened when the Niners went to New Orleans. So I love the 10 points in that game. There's not a lot of quarterbacks I trust with 10, especially against a great defense.
And the other aspect of it is, this is the San Francisco team who's getting no respect for what they did last year and are battling an incredible amount of obstacles between illnesses and injuries, and yet they're still right there.
And their losses, they're coming off of 2 losses in a row, and they're losing to some of the best teams in the league. I mean, they got 4 losses. I'm sorry, they got 5 losses, and the last 2 of them were against Green Bay and Seattle. Those are 2 of the top scoring offenses with 2 of the best quarterbacks in the league. But then you go back to the loss prior to that against Miami. That game, everybody thought that what just happened, the Dolphins just went and blew out San Francisco. Well, that was the start for the Dolphins of what has become a league-leading defense in sacks and turnovers since that period. They're one of the top teams defensively. So the Niners are not losing to terrible teams. They're losing some of the better teams in the league.
If you had the Miami defense in your fantasy league, you had to be in pretty good shape the last couple of weeks.
One would think so, and you gotta love the way that they're playing. They're another one of my plays this week, and it's not because of Tua. A couple weeks ago when you and I talked, it's not because of Tua, although I think that doesn't hurt. But for Miami this week, their defense is playing fantastic. They're sacking quarterbacks, they're taking the ball away, and they're not asking their young quarterback to do too much. And now they get a Chargers team that's traveling across the country to play them. And this is a Charger team that can't hold on to the lead.
I got to think, if I remember somewhere, I saw the Charger coach was on the hot seat.
If he's not, then there needs to be a new hot seat operator and turn up that temperature, because giving up leads like what's happened these last couple weeks, I mean, that comes down to conditioning and coaching, and that's a mental thing, right? I would think.
Well, we called it, I think last week we called it record-breaking stinking, because they stunk on a record level.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And then a couple weeks before, they let Denver back into a game. So, yeah, I like Miami in this spot. But you know what? To the question you asked, maybe that's one where we are scratching our head. I've looked at it all different angles, and I just can't see how Miami doesn't win that game pretty convincingly. But that's one of those low spreads.
All right, so let's do this. Let's go through the board, and some of the games I'm going to just make comments about, and I'm thinking that I'll be on the same page. So, of course, Thursday night, we're still waiting around for the live action to pop. So what happened is we're following John from GMF Sports Consultants Underplay, and they scored right away. They scored in the first 3 minutes. Tennessee did. It's 7-0. But now there's 5 minutes in the first quarter. The Colts have the ball deep in their own end, and it's still 7-0. So we haven't had any live action opportunities yet because it hasn't opened. But the next game is Philly at New York Giants. So you're not even going to look at that game, right? You're just crossing it right off.
I just cross it off. I honestly just cross it off, and that's just a thing I do. Any NFC East matchup, no matter the team, I just cross it off. And if you look at what they've done to each other this year, Dallas, I don't. There was a point when Dallas had gone 6 games and not covered a spread, and they were a really bad favorite. But the Giants have been the ultimate spread dog. I mean, they just wreck spreads when they're the underdog. But then Washington has kind of done the same thing, but they just rough each other up, and every one of these matchups just kind of looks the same to me. And it's easier to walk away. To me, walking away from it is more powerful than winning.
Oh, it ain't worth it, especially when you lose and then you go back and you got 2 things you got to kick yourself. One is because you bet it and lost, and the other is because you broke one of your rules.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, if I had to pick this game, I would flip a coin. I'd probably get a quicker answer than if I were to try and break down the stats and the matchups and everything else.
Hey, you know what? I really want to thank you for coming on. I do apologize for the Zoom issues, but you do realize we've got another 10 minutes here, and I have no idea if the people could even hear you.
Well, thanks for trying to get me in. Nobody could ever tell me that you don't love me.
Yeah, all right. So here's the next game, Washington, Detroit. One of those teams is from the NFC East. Are we throwing that whole game out?
No, I wouldn't throw that whole game out. The only way I would throw it out is if Washington was playing Dallas or Philly. I like actually Washington in this spot. 5.5 points or 6, depending on where you look, is too many. Washington does not have a bad defense, and Alex Smith is going to play. And Alex Smith doesn't give games away. And to me, with 2 teams like this that don't have great offenses, the team that's going to win is the team that gets a turnover, or I should say the team that's going to lose is one that gives the ball away. And Alex Smith is not going to give the ball away. I don't know that he wins the game for them, but he's not going to give them any extra chances. And I don't know who wins, but I certainly like the points in that one. And Washington, give me the 5.5, or give me the 6, wherever you find it.
Now, you and I have been talking for years, and when we first started the show, there weren't 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19-point NFL favorites very often. And it seems like now we have one every single week.
Yeah, it does. And again, there's only a couple quarterbacks that I really would trust with those kind of points.
Is Aaron Rodgers one of them?
It depends on the situation.
Well, they got Jacksonville coming to Green Bay.
Yeah, and I would think that should be a safe place. I would think that one's pretty safe. Jacksonville doesn't. At this point, Jacksonville is going to hurt themselves more than they help themselves. I had Jacksonville last week in the 6.5, so they won for me last week, and that's about the only look I'll give them. I would think Green Bay at home, 13.5 should be pretty easy.
All right, so Cleveland was sitting up top. They were looking pretty good. Now they're 5-3. They're playing Houston. They're given 3. More importantly, long term, do they got a chance to make the playoffs?
Well, now their division is incredibly tough. I do love Cleveland in this spot because I think that they can run the ball really well against a defense that's not very good at stopping it. And so I like Cleveland in this spot. As far as their chances to make the playoffs, well, we got the 7 teams, and I just saw we're talking 16 teams in the playoffs. So that creates a whole different scenario for Cleveland and fringe teams like them. So Cleveland at 5-3 is looking good to get in the playoffs. Really, their challenge would be the Raiders, the Colts, and Miami. But I think that Cleveland does have a shot at making the playoffs, and the way that their style of football makes sense in the playoffs. They're not really this high-flying offense that needs the fast turf and the sun shining. So if they get to the playoffs, I think that they could win a game depending on who they play. But I do like them in this spot this week. They're not coming off of a bye, but it's kind of like a half bye because they had the Thursday night game the prior week.
What about Tom Brady and Tampa Bay? They're going into Carolina. I think Carolina's running back McCaffrey is hurt. They're still getting 4.5. What did we see last week from Tampa Bay? Was it Tampa Bay? Was it New Orleans? Was it just a combination of everything? And should we start worrying about Tom Brady?
No, I'm not worried about Tom Brady, not even a little bit. I think that the game last week is just simply Sean Payton having Tampa's number. For whatever reason, he's got their number, and someone wasn't right early, and Tampa just kind of let it go. But if you go back, if you just look at Tampa after their losses this year, they lost to the Saints. They came back 31-17 the following week against Carolina. This could be a repeat, but if you go back to their loss to the Bears, they came back the following week and went 38-10 against Green Bay. So not only do they come back and win from a loss, they come back and they win by a pretty good margin. And if you look at most of their wins this year, they only have one win that was less than really a touchdown. I mean, most of their wins are by 7, 8, 10, 14. They won against the Giants 25-23, but the rest of the way, their wins are by pretty large, 2 touchdowns or more. So I feel great about Tampa in this situation.
All right, so the Colts just threw an incomplete pass at the Tennessee 6, 3rd and 3. Are you at all watching the game or have the game on anywhere?
Well, I just saw what was going on. And at this point, if I were live betting because the Colts just threw that pick, I would be jumping on plus 6.5 for the first half. I think you let Tennessee do whatever it is they're going to do on the first couple plays. If they gain if they gain 3 or 4, any positive gain right here is probably going to shift the live to 7, and I would jump on the plus 7 for the first half.
All right, so next game we're going to look at. You mentioned Denver with that comeback win over the Chargers. They're playing in Oakland. Is either of those teams in the West going to threaten anybody?
Well, that's the thing is I think that the Raiders, I just can't figure them out because I think that they have all the pieces to beat any team. I mean, they beat the Patriots before we knew that the Patriots were not very good. But I'm sorry, they lost to the Patriots. They've beaten the Saints this year. They're not terrible. So I think that they can win a playoff game if they get to the playoffs. As far as the game this weekend, I think they cover the 4. I don't think they have a problem covering the 4. They have all the weapons on offense and defense to do it. They just need to tie it all together and be able to win consistently.
I would agree, and not only just win consistently, even play consistently, because from quarter to quarter, sometimes the Raiders look great and then they look horrible.
Yeah, and then you get into a game where a couple weeks ago where they played the Browns, and I mean that was a coach win. There was nothing that those players did to win that game. It was nothing but field goals. And so if they get into a close game like that, you got to trust that. You got to trust Gruden to make the right call in certain scenarios. So I like this Raiders team. I am not really comfortable with, as a Chiefs fan, what it's going to look like when we play them here in a few weeks.
All right, so we got a couple minutes left. We got a few games we didn't talk about. We did talk about San Francisco, New Orleans with the 10. Seattle and the Rams, that's one that's jumping out at me a little bit. The Rams are favored.
Yep, and I like the Rams there.
All right, so now before we go, we're going to hop on and do our weekly live action play. So what you're saying is we're going into the first half, and we're looking at the point spread for the first half.
Yep.
All right, we got the Colts here. Plus 3.5 at plus 102.
Yep. I'm saying you watch Tennessee run a couple plays, see if we can catch this first half at 4. If I think that's the play. If Tennessee scores, you're going to get plus 10.5 on the first half, and that's where you get in.
All right, that sounds like a play. Now I'm also looking at John's play. So if that field goal, they kicked the field goal with 29 seconds left in the quarter, it looks like, and that, of course, is going to push them over for the first quarter. I'm betting the first quarter to first half. So when I look at the game now, the game is literally, for the total, right about where John had it at 49.5. So if I'm going to hold off also on the gameplay, I'm going to wait a little bit, and I'm going to see if I can get that under 42.5.
Right now, what I'm looking at on Bovada, the over/under is 49.5.
Right, and
Yep.
and so if I go under 42.5, I get some good odds. I'm getting 45 now at plus 32.
Yep.
So I got under 42.5 right there. Boom, plus 206. I'm on it. and that's the play of the week.